1170 in Clinton, North Carolina.
What was it again?
Welcome to Tika Talks, as she touches on everyday topics and issues in our lives, encouraging and uplifting.
All right.
And now, without further ado, introducing Tika Talks.
Good evening. I hope everybody is doing well. Hope everybody's taking care of themselves. We've had some hot days, got some hot days coming, but we gonna be just fine. Sitting in the seat for Tika Talks on this evening. Been kind of thinking on this thing for really all last week and this morning, dealing with the Sunday school lesson, and kind of touched on it a little bit. From the inside out is the way that it should be. And this thought came from Matthew chapter 24, when Jesus was leaving the temple and his disciples wanted him to see the magnificence of all of the buildings, especially the temple that had been renovated. And Jesus was telling them in so many words, you have this beautiful, beautiful edifice. You have this beautiful, beautiful temple. But the problem was that there was something that was not quite right on the inside. And sometimes that's what we have to deal with a lot of times as people. Because sometimes we can't take things, and sometimes we can't take people at face value. Because sometimes we'll see a person and they might look the part, they might seem the part for a little while, only to continue in conversation with them and passing by, that we will start to see that they are kind of not what they look like on the outside, what they sound like on the outside. Because anytime you conversate and talk with someone long enough, what's on the inside will eventually come out. What's in it will eventually come to the top. And so sometimes we have to be on guard against those things about judging just from an outer appearance. Even some of the farmers now are starting, to pick corn, and they're picking it early. And the reason that they can pick it early is because me and my dad were having this conversation last week when we were riding. Because they have these big bins that are able to dry the corn out, even though it's not as dry as it needs to be, before picking. But they have these great big containers that you see, these great big bins. And what these bins will do is they have these fans on the inside of them that dry them. And sometimes you can ride by a field and it looks like a beautiful, beautiful field of corn, only to look at it at a closer inspection, and it may not be as beautiful and as good a crop as we may think that it is. Because see, sometimes what we do is we take I think we've all maybe been guilty of this, taking a snapshot, just say, of someone's life. And because it can work both ways. So a person could be having a bad day, and then see them sound off on another person, and then maybe say, I didn't think that person was like that. I thought they were a nicer person. I thought that was a Christian. But what we have done at that time is we have taken a snapshot of one incident, and we don't know what could have been going on with this person. They could have lost a loved one. They could have too much pressure on them, and they could have just had one bad moment. And in that bad moment, we took a snapshot, and what we saw on the outside, we tried to make that person, when it necessarily may not be the case. The person could be under a lot of pressure. Their anxiety could be high, and that's not to make any excuses for it, because we should be loving and caring towards all people. And no matter what we have going on in our lives, it does not or should not give us the right to try and take it out on another person. By no means should we do that. But in the cases that when that happens, we have to be careful and be on guard not to take a snapshot of that. And every time we see that person, we think of that one isolated incident. Then we're doing no different than those that were at the temple, who took one snapshot of the beauty, and not realizing the word and everything that was supposed to be going on the inside of the temple, that was not happening at all. And so we could be guilty of the same thing when we take a snapshot of a person when they might be having a bad day, and the pressures of life have weighed them down, and then they respond when in reality that may not be the case at all. And so what we have to do is we have to do just like God does with us. We have to be willing to extend grace to everyone, because grace was extended to us. And so like I said, this works both ways. Just like in the case to where you see a person that might just be having a bad day, and you might say you thought this, you thought that, but then the way they acted did not line up with what you thought, what you had seen on the outside, and you didn't know that was on the inside of them. Look, there's some good in the worst of us. Look, there's some bad in the best of us. And look, everybody gets to a boiling point at some point, with so much coming at them. But we have to be on guard and respond in the right way, in the correct way, in the positive way is the way that we have to respond, and not do it in a negative way. And so what we should strive to do is that what's on the inside shows up on the outside. All right, because we are believers, and since we are believers, then love, joy, peace, long suffering, all faith, meekness, temperance, all of these things, the fruits of the Spirit that's on the inside, should be working on the inside of us, flowing on the outside. Okay, and when that flows on the outside, then what people see on the outside is what started from the inside. So it should be from the inside out. But some cases we run up on, it's exactly the opposite. It's from the outside to the inside. Because look, Jesus says, or the word says, that man looks on the outer appearance, but God looks on the heart. God looks on the inside. And this was in the Old Testament, when this was after Saul had been rejected, and Samuel was going down to Jesse's house. And even Jesse, being the man of God, asked Jesse to bring his sons out, because the oil is going to flow. And what they were doing, they were looking at the outward appearance. They were looking at someone that looked like they might be a king or be a good king. And so it was working from the outside. It was exactly opposite from the way that God does it. God does it from the inside out. And so those things, sometimes we get them twisted. And so all of those sons came out, but the oil did not flow out of the horn that Samuel had. And he looks at Jesse and he said, "Do you have any other sons?" And he said, oh yeah, I've got one in the back, and he's tending the sheep. And that was David, who was going to eventually come up to be king. But God had anointed him to be king, even though he did not look the part. And so the reason why I said it's got to be from the inside out is because sometimes we can be jumped to judgment. We can rush to judgment, And in doing that, we make wrong decisions when we should be seeking God, asking God. And look, we have to have some patience about it. All right. So look, as soon as they walk in the room, all right, they know the first son, the eldest son of Jesse. You know, because he was almost like Saul, head and shoulders above, you know, with his height, his stature, and everything. So they just knew that the oil was going to flow. But it didn't. And so what do you do when your way, the way that you think, the way that you try to judge it by our eyes, it doesn't work? What if Jesse would have turned around and went right back out? And then Israel would have still been without a king. But no, he stayed there because he knew if God says that he was going to anoint him a king in Jesse's house, there had to be another son there. And while I'm there, this is something that we have to pick up on too. Remember what God tells you in the beginning. When God shares a thing with you in the beginning, he does not tell us what is going to happen between A and Z. All right, God may start us out this way. He starts us out one way. And with him starting us out one way, when we first get the word, we are enthusiastic about it. We are hyped about it. We ready to go. I mean, we just ready. But then on our way to achieve what God has set for us, stumbling blocks are placed in the way. And so because stumbling blocks are placed in the way, God does not tell us every stumbling block that is going to come. Because if he did, sometimes we would just abort the mission. We wouldn't even start the mission. We wouldn't even accept the mission. So we have to remember what God has told us in the beginning. And keep that in our hearts, at the forefront of our mind, knowing that he who has begun a good work is going to perform that thing till the day of Jesus Christ. And so we have to continue to push on. So if you are almost about to faint, give up, throw in the towel, remember what God told you in the beginning. And you keep that same faith that you had when God told you that he was going to give you the strength to achieve it. By the time you left point A to get to Z, you were going to obtain this thing. But trials, troubles, stumbling blocks, they are just going to come. The book of James tells us to not think it strange when these things come our way. Look, it is just a test of our faith. God will give you the strength to carry on. Look, he didn't bring you through the last thing to get you at this point and not be with you now. Look, this ain't the first time you're being sick. This ain't the first time you ain't had no money. This is not the first time somebody violated your trust. This is not the first time that you've been in this situation. But you know what is the constant thing in all of it? God has been right there every time, and he brought you out every single time. And as the song says, if he did it before, he'll do it again. And so why are you fainting? Why are you getting weary? Stay in the race. God will strengthen you and keep you where you need to be. But we have to do this. We have to look to the hills from which cometh all of our help, knowing and realizing that all of our help comes from the Lord. And when we know that, trials are going to come. All right? We just got to continue to push on. We have to bob and weave. We might get knocked down, but we got to get up. We got to dust ourselves off, and we have to continue to move on. God has called you. There is a plan and a purpose for our lives, and God sets the plan in front of us. And so a lot of things are going to happen before we obtain what we are after, the goal that God has set before us. He has placed it in our paths. But we have to get to it. So don't allow any of the distractions, any of the outside noise. See, that's why this thing is going to work from the inside out. Because you have what it takes on the inside. What messes us up sometimes is we allow that outside noise, those residual noises, all those noises coming. The enemy sending this. You're never going to be well. Oh, you're never going to have enough money. Oh, you're not going to be able to obtain this. No, this is not going to happen. All that. No, you have to depend and trust that thing that is on the inside of you, the word that is on the inside of you, that seed. You have to keep watering that. You have to keep listening to that, because if you listen to all these noises going on, because anything you do, there is a voice competing for your ear. When you watch TV, as soon as there's a commercial break, bam, something is competing for your ear. We want you to come and buy this steak. We want you to drink this product. We want you to wear this design. We have made this phone that, this is the phone that you need. Everything is competing for your ear, for your attention. But we have to stay in tune to that seed, to that voice on the inside of us. And just remember, God has not led you wrong yet. Look, the 23rd song says, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. And so look, when a shadow, if something is going to be within your shadow, it's got to get close to you. And so you may be walking through the shadow of death. You might be walking through a dark place right now. But child of God, hold on. Do not give up. Don't you faint. Don't you quit. You stay in the race. You have such a great cloud of witnesses that are in the stands, cheering you on, trying to cheer you on to the finish line. And you have those who have gone on before you in Scripture, those who are in your family, who maybe have passed on. They are cheering you on, telling you to fight on. Don't you quit. Don't you give up. You can do it, because look, your breakthrough could be the next moment away. And what a sad thing it would be for you to give up and realize you were so close to obtaining the very thing that God had placed in your lap, that is going to change the trajectory of your entire life and your family. And it would be so sad to give up and not continue to pursue what God has placed in front of you. Paul says we have to forget about those things which are behind us, but we have to press toward the mark of the prize of the high calling, and that is in Christ Jesus. And so, look, that tells me, if I'm going to press, that tells me that things are going to come against me. But I also know this: greater is he that is in me than he that is in the world. So I told you, this thing works from the inside out. That's why we can't be judging things from the outside, because you can look at a house on the outside and say, oh, it's just all right, could have been to where the person that normally cuts the grass, might be backed up and hadn't gotten by there to cut the grass, and so it makes the place kind of look all shabby or whatever. But only to go on the inside and say, my God, I did not realize this place was like this. I have been in some of the places that didn't look the greatest on the outside, but to get on the inside, some of the best food you ever want to eat. And I was like, why am I just now finding out about this place right here? And so we have to press. All right, But look, like I said, greater is he that is in you. Let this thing work from the inside and then let it work out. If you continue to press, if you continue to push, don't let those distractions, don't let the disturbances, don't let anything stop you from reaching your goal. You have to continue to push on, fight on, soldier, fight on. It works from the inside out. I'm going to keep that thing ringing, because when you hear that noise and you hear that negativity and all this toxic stuff that may be trying to go into your ear, and girl, if it were me, bruh, if that were me, this is what I'd do. And they don't know what they would do because they're not in that situation. Everybody can sit there and play Monday morning quarterback sitting in the chair saying this is what I can do and can't. He that is in the world, it works from the inside out. Tap into that inside voice, and don't you let those residual noises, sounds stop you, block you from anything, from obtaining your purpose, because God has a plan for your life. And guess what? You will reach it if you don't quit, if you don't give up. Thank God. That's the word.
All right. No shout out today?
Shout out.